it's me. But unfortunately, because of the lockdown situations, I can't get out. So I'm restricted to home because good old Boris has said that we're in tier 3. And because we're in tier 3 and Dartmoor is in tier 2 and is open, I can't get down to Dartmoor. So because I can't get down to Dartmoor, I can't film in Dartmoor. So I'm just going to film at home in my back garden. Now, I can't show you my back garden because it's a bit of a mess, so we're just going to film inside the Duomid here. I don't have much room in the back garden. The back garden is quite small, so I brought a very small shelter with me, as in one Duomid MLD. So I don't know how long that took to mention MLD, but not very long. Now, my back garden's getting a bit on the warm side. I have to say, I've put this down jacket on as part of this video, but I might actually have to take it off in a minute. But I just wanted to talk about winter camping, because, you know, we would like to get out to do some winter camping. And I've seen on some of the groups, forums, not forums, I don't bother with forums, like Facebook groups and things like that, you know, people asking about winter camping and what you need. So one thing I don't very often hear other people talking about on videos with winter camping, I will say that I don't watch many other videos. I sort of tend to do my own, and I watch one or two, but I don't watch so many. Now, I have, in addition to pitching the Duomid, I have put everything inside the Duomid as if I was on Dartmoor. I'm not, I'm at home. I'm in my back garden. But I have got everything here, you know, just as it would be there, so I can sort of show you what I've got without pointing the camera around, because my back garden's a bit of a mess. Now, one of the things that I think is quite important is batteries and power packs and things like that. Well, obviously, when you're in the summer, it's quite warm and you don't really have to worry too much about, it's getting a bit warm now, you don't have to worry so much about temperature, you know, in the summer with battery packs and things like that. But in the winter, you need to make sure that you have, I'm trying to turn my torch off, but in the winter, of course, batteries, they don't like the winter, they don't like the cold so much. You know, if it was very, very cold and you were maybe watching, you know, a film and the temperature dropped down in a lot and you just had your tablet exposed to the elements, your tablet could just shut off because it gets cold. So, you know, it's just important to remember when it's cold, you know, to protect batteries. So what I tend to do is I put all my batteries, power packs and everything, and my camera and things like that inside the sleeping bag. And I say I've got the sleeping bag here, you know, just to show you as an example. just to put everything, you know, so it's warm, you know, kept warm and toasty. And what you could do, right, is that testing. Okay, yeah, so when you've got your battery packs and things like that and power packs, keep them, you know, in the sleeping bag with you. Obviously when you're walking, there's not so much you can do about them, you know, keep them in your pack and pray really. But obviously if you've got a, you know, like an MLD balaclava like this one, then of course you could put all your battery packs in there and put that inside the sleeping bag, or just put them inside the stuff sack that you put them all in, and just put them inside the sleeping bag like that. But basically all batteries, you know, you do need to protect and keep them as warm and cozy as possible. So that's kind of like sort of batteries and things like that. Just keep them warm and comfortable. As for yourself, I'm just going to take the microphone off 1 second. Hopefully you can still hear me for a minute. So you need a warm jacket, so like a down jacket like this one. Even though I am in my back garden, I've only got a few bits to show you because I can't be bothered to, you know, come and go from the house. You know, I keep getting distracted by putting the kettle on and that type of thing. So I'm only going to show you just a few basic things just to give you a rough idea. So yeah, you need like a down jacket to keep you warm. That's if you're walking around your back garden. But your back garden. So, you know, if you're walking out and about, but without your pack on, because you can't wear, you know, a down jacket and your pack, you know, at the same time, you know, unless you're in the Arctic or something like that, in which case, you know, you probably would. Or they probably wouldn't wear down then. Anyway, I don't know. We're not in the North Pole anyway. But whatever the situation is, obviously you need a down jacket, or a synthetic jacket would also, you know, work as well. But I must admit, unless it's very wet, I prefer a down jacket. So you need a down jacket to keep you warm. Now, it's unlikely that you would need down booties, but I've had some on here, you know, just in case. Again, you know, you might want them if your feet are going to get cool. And you can get like very, very lightweight down booties. These are PhD, Peter Hutchinson design down booties. And you might also want some down leggings. Again, you could use those as part of a layering system inside your sleeping bag. If perchance your sleeping bag gets, you know, isn't quite warm enough, you can add warmth that way. Okay, then you might want a balaclava. This one's an MLD one, and this obviously is very useful, you know, to keep your head warm if needed. So you get caught around your ears. Now, you can use one like that, or my other one. This is one thing I do have a couple of, and I bought so many into my back garden. But never mind. Or you can use one like this, like a Polartec one, which is the one that I normally, you know, would wear. But this was quite tight now. I think my head's grown a bit. Must be a big head. So, you know, you could have a balaclava to keep your head warm in camp when you're camping. What I have discovered recently, well last year what I discovered, is my hooded fleece hood is, generally speaking, certainly where I camp, is enough to keep my head warm. Now, you may know that I like also to have a wind shirt on when I'm sitting in camp, and then if you put that around your head as well, that can also, you know, give you a surprising amount of warmth, you know, if needed in camp. So to be honest, it's not always necessary to have a hat with you, because if you've got a hooded top, you might find that's enough. Now gloves, you might find that you want a variety of gloves. Now when you go winter camping, never take just one pair of gloves, because if they get wet, you know, you might end up in a bit of bother. And also take plenty of hats. This is another hat. I seem to like hats a lot for camping because my head gets very cold. So make sure you've got plenty of hats, and then if you lose one or one gets wet, you've always got a backup hat handy. Now gloves, I tend to I spend all my money on watches and I don't really bother buying new outdoor gear so much these days, so all of my stuff is quite old now. Okay, so I like to have a pair of liner gloves. This is just one glove here, the other one's around here somewhere, but a liner glove is handy to have. Can go under another pair of gloves in an emergency. If other gloves get lost or damp, you've just got, you know, like an emergency glove as well. I like a lightish pair of gloves. These I tend to use in camp. They're touch screen, and just I tend to keep one pair in my bag for just in camp. I also, oh, and I've got another hat here in case, and a warmer hat in case it gets, this is like a Polartec hat in case it gets, you know, even colder. But it would like have to be like -5 or -6 for that, so it's not so likely in my back garden. Right, and I've got these Wind Pro gloves. I like Wind Pro gloves. You can get gloves, waterproof gloves and liner gloves and things like that. I used those a long time ago, but I used to find when I put my hand in and I pulled my hand out, the liner would come out or things would shift inside, and I never found them very good. Now maybe things have moved on in the last, you know, like since the dinosaurs and everything, but I prefer a fleece glove with Wind Pro, and that's quite nice and comfortable for the hand. It's not windproof, but the way it's woven together is quite wind resistant, so that's a handy glove to have. We need to talk about torches, but we'll do about that later on. With gloves, I like to have an over glove. This is an MLD over glove, so rather than having a waterproof glove and then it's all together and when you pull your hand out all the innards comes out as well, I prefer to have an over glove. And then if you wear a fleece glove and then you put the over glove over the top like this, and then, you know, the gloves are separated, you know, deliberately separated. So that's quite handy to bear in mind. I always like to have, especially in the winter, a spare t-shirt. Now this t-shirt, this is a merino t-shirt, and this I always put in the stuff sack with the sleeping bag. So in the sleeping bag stuff sack, which would be, say, like this stuff sack here, I will put the sleeping bag in. If I have my inner like very lightweight inner bag to go inside the sleeping bag, obviously that goes in that stuff sack. The sleeping bag goes in the stuff sack. Nighttime socks goes in the sleeping bag. Nighttime leggings goes in the sleeping bag. All these different bags. Ah, I forgot to put that back over here. Hopefully you heard all of that. I'm sure you would have picked up most of it. My down jacket, wherever I put that over there, my down jacket obviously goes in a separate dry bag. I can't get it all in the same bag, so that'll go in a separate dry bag. So if perchance I got soaked when out and about walking, you know, if I was on Dartmoor, then I would still have guaranteed leggings, socks, a t-shirt and a down jacket to keep me warm in camp. So even if everything else is compromised, when I'm in camp, I still have a guarantee of dry clothing. Even if it's not quite enough to keep me warm, or very warm, you know, it's enough that I will get through the night, you know, and be, you know, be reasonably okay. Because as you know, ideally I like to wear a t-shirt, a shirt, you know, a fleece in bed, because I'm an absolutely freezing cold sleeper. So I can't say I'd be particularly warm or comfortable with just a down jacket and a t-shirt, but it's better than nothing if you're out in the middle of nowhere. That's why I always like to have a bag that is, you know, at least reasonably warm enough. I tend not to bother too much with towels unless I know it's going to be really, really poor, very wet weather, and you can't always guarantee that. I used to bring loads and loads of towels with me, but I very rarely needed to use them, so I tended to leave most of my towels, you know, behind. So I tend to bring just one tiny towel in case it's needed, and to be honest, it's not very often needed. I still pretty much always bring my MLD kilt with me. If it's the winter and I'm in a more enclosed shelter, it really isn't needed. It's more needed for summer to take the place of waterproof trousers, or you know, if I'm using a tarp or something like that and I need a little extra protection or something like that, or it's very good in the trail star to act as a door in the trail star. So in the winter it's not really needed, but because it's so light and small and I'm just in the habit of bringing it all the time, I tend to still bring it anyway. I tend to bring, I always definitely guarantee I need a pillow. I normally bring a lighter pillow than this. This is just to show you, really. I don't even know what this one's called. But anyway, it's quite an old, oh, yeah, it says there, a pump pillow, X-Ped pump pillow. And I just wanted to show you that it's just something different. I tend to use an X-Ped, a very lightweight pillow. It's like 50 grams or something like that. It's very, very light. So I tend to bring that with me when I go, you know, camping, you know, winter, summer, all year round. Now, it's a bit tight in here. I brought, as I say, because I just wanted to get in the garden. I can't do anything in the conservatory, and I used to do some videos in the conservatory, and you know, since sort of foolishly getting married, you know, there's no room out there now, so I can't do any filming, you know, at home as such, you know, bits here and there. So I can only sort of show you, you know, what I can here. Now, I was going to try and show you this because I pumped it up, you know, just to for something to sit on really, but it's not the most convenient to show you. I normally prefer and normally have a thermarest. I normally prefer and have a thermarest XTherm, and I must admit the XTherm is my favourite mat. I virtually never get cold spots with that. Again, just I wanted to show something a bit different, and in all my other videos I'm always showing the XTherm. So this is an X-Pad Dang Mat Ultralight 7, and I find with this that I get cold spots, so I always make sure I've got a foam mat, you know, under me, and I'll try and show you my foam mats in a minute, but they're under me. Just sort of chucked everything together like as if I was on Dartmoor. I'm not on Dartmoor, I'm in my back garden, but you know, I just sort of chucked everything together, you know, so it's not the most convenient for doing video. It's not the most convenient for doing videos. So yeah, you want to make sure you have a winter mat with you, because don't take, you know, a summer mat with you, because you won't be warm enough, because the cold, it doesn't matter how warm your sleeping bag is. You could have a sleeping bag that's rated at like minus moon temperature or whatever the temperature. It's probably a bit hot up there, isn't it? But anyway, you could have a sleeping bag rated at minus 50 or something stupid like that, you know. But of course, because you're compressing it to the ground when you sleep on it, you're going to get cold underneath. So you need to make sure that your mat is warm enough, you know, to stop cold from the ground coming up, you know, to you. And I just find that with most mats, maybe it's me and I'm just cold, but I find with most mats that the cold still creeps through. So what I always do, and I don't know how easy I can show this, but what I always do is I always have with me, if I just creep down here a minute, there's one of these egg foam mat things. So that's useful if you stop and if you're walking and you stop, it's useful to sit on. So straight away I can feel the cold from my nicely mown lawn, you know, creeping up through even this mat. And that's just, you know, it's just the way it is. It's just like, it's just how it is. So I always put this under my down airbed or my XTherm airbed. Even though under the XTherm it's probably not quite as necessary, I always put this underneath, and it just gives, well, one, I suppose it protects the airbed from the ground if there was anything sharp under there, and two, it just gives me a little bit more, you know, warmth and protection to keep me warm. So, you know, don't think that an airbed by itself is necessarily going to keep you warm. It might not. If you're like me, you might want something, you know, a little bit warmer under your bed just to help keep you, you know, warm. So I always, you know, bring something like that, and I do that pretty much year round now because it's so light. You can strap it to the outside of your pack, and it just doesn't take up any room. I tend to bring in like another very, very, very light foam mat with me as well. I always have two for myself, and then I give Lassie, and then Lassie has one as well. So we'll like bring 3 foam mats, one for Lassie, that one for me, which is a thick one, and then a very, very thin one for me as well, which is useful for kneeling on around camp. You can stand on it if you need to stand on it. You could put it under your bed if you want to put it under your bed as well. So that's you know, that's quite useful to have as well. The other thing that you need to make sure you have is a warm enough jacket to walk in. Now in the summer I tend to pack a Gore-Tex jacket or pack the poncho in case. But in the winter I like to have something a little bit more substantial, a bit more like an overcoat. So in the winter months I like to have a Paramo jacket. Now a lot of people, you know, when I say a lot of people, some people don't seem to get on with Paramo, but I've always, you know, I've always got on well with it. I've always liked Paramo. So mountain rescue people wear it, so it must be good enough for that. But it keeps you warm and dry. You just have to know how to treat it and look after it and proof it, you know, to make sure that it does stay waterproof. That's the only thing, because it's not like a Gore-Tex jacket, so you do need to, you know, treat it a little bit differently. But like I said, generally speaking, if it's going to be like 1 or 2 or 3 degrees or colder, that's when I think Paramo comes into its own. If it's going to be much warmer than that, and these aren't exact figures, but if it's going to be much warmer than that, then I would probably still be wearing Gore-Tex or something like a Gore-Tex jacket as a backup, and just have a wind shirt and a fleece or something like that. You just have to, you know, it's really just kind of personal choice and what works for you really. Obviously waterproof trousers over normal outdoor trousers are useful, obviously useful, important. But again, when it's very, very cold, then as a change, I might wear Paramo trousers, and then that acts as a trouser and they're waterproof. Well, very highly water resistant is probably a better term. I did wear these last year, and I must admit I've got a bit of a wet bottom with them. Unfortunately, because I'm not walking quite so much as I would like to. I think I put on a bit of weight recently over the last year or so. So where these were a good fit for me, they're a bit tight now, and I think they were a bit tight around the bum area. And of course, the Paramo works from, you know, being able to push water out. And if it's tight, it can't push water out. So I think that's why I got a bit of a wet bottom last year. But Paramo is, you know, is very, very good for the winter when it's going to be like, you know, like I said, freezing or below, or just above freezing. I think is good for me. And then obviously you need water containers. You need to make sure that you've got plenty of food. I like sort of sweet biscuit things. Maybe you might like to bring some, maybe you like to bring some crackers, something like that. It's quite handy. And then I also like to bring, they're just super lightweight, you know. I like to bring like a mug shots, for example. Maybe like 2 of these would be for an evening meal, or 1 pasta and sauce is enough for an evening meal. I just put them as an example. Obviously a bit later on I'll be going inside and having a nice cooked meal in a nice warm bed later on. Cheese is quite handy to have. I like that type of cheese. And this is just for an example. I just brought it from the fridge just now. Tasty Stilton. So I find that useful. Also, obviously because I'm a teaholic, people ask if I ever bring, you know, beer or anything. I never bring any beer or wine. I drink tea and that's it. So I always make sure that I have plenty of tea bags and plenty of milk powder. And obviously you need to make sure that you have porridge for breakfast, or whatever you want for breakfast. And what I like to have for the evening is like a cup of soup. Now, probably wouldn't drink a cup of soups at home, I do sometimes, but for out here, out in your, you know, what, there, yeah, not there, yeah, then a cup of soups are quite handy. We have room in the back garden. You know, cup of soups are very handy to have. What was that, darling? Dinner's ready. I'll be in a minute. So that's handy. That's handy to have. Yeah, we're really in the back garden, really. And then I like to have my weather meter so I can tell how warm it is. If you're somewhere, that might be cool. You know, I like to know how cool it is. Boots. Now, if you remember, in very early videos, I tended to wear non-waterproof trail shoes. And if I was doing more walking, more like I used to do, these days I tend to do fairly short walks and more camping. It's just how it's gone. It's just how it's gone for me. But if I was doing more walking and less camping, as it were, I would probably still wear the trail shoes and either sealskins for walking. Well, but actually, what I used to do is I used to wear trail shoes, not waterproof, normal trail shoe, and then I would put a liner, like a polyester liner sock on, then a liner merino sock on, and then a sealskin sock over the top of that. And then I'd wear all of that in a trail shoe. And that kept my feet not necessarily dry. I will say they didn't stay dry like that, because sealskins doesn't stay waterproof for very long. They leak very quickly. But it would keep my feet not necessarily dry, but it would keep my feet warm, because the two sock combination was for warmth-ish. And then the sealskin sock, even though it didn't keep my feet waterproof, it acted as a wind barrier, and it was quite an efficient way of you know, keeping feet, you know, keeping the wind out. So that was quite useful. But these days, and I just to show you, normally I would show you a lightweight boot. Normally I'd wear just a lightweight boot, and you've all seen my lightweight boots, so that's why I just thought on this occasion I would just show you that I've got these La Sportiva boots, and I wear these occasionally, and I must admit it's a nice boot. It's fairly flexible, it's quite lightweight, it's incredibly comfortable, and you know, if I have to wear a boot, then that's what I wear, that La Sportiva boot. Other than that, I tend to wear like an Innovate boot, a very lightweight boot, or something like that, and I find that's enough. Again, unless it's really freezing cold, then you might want a boot more like that. I tend to keep things as lightweight as I can. My cup is the same as summer. I just use this, it's super lightweight. Cooking system, at some point I'll probably do another video on my cooking system. It doesn't change. It's the same. It's the one part of my camping system that stays the same year round. It's an the writing's disappearing on it, but it's a titanium EverNew ultralight 600 pot, and I think I got this one on Amazon, and because I couldn't get it in the United Kingdom. I think it came from Japan or something like that. This was like years ago. But this 600 pot I find is plenty for me. And I have this tiny little thing to put meths in, and that's my meths. In England, in England we call it meths. For my American friends, this is methylated spirits. When I say that I'm using meths, I don't literally mean I'm snorting meths. It's methylated spirits. And then the Sidewinder cone. And when the Sidewinder cone is rolled up, it rolls up into this. You could put a rubber band around it as well. But it rolls up into this. And every single thing in my cooking system, because the spoon folds down, so everything in my cooking system fits inside this pot. Now, you know, there probably are lighter and smaller and other systems these days, but this, it just works for me. The only thing you need to be aware of is your lighter. Now, I've seen people talk about putting a lighter, putting a bit of a wick, getting a wick out, and lighting the wick so the flame goes down into the meths. Paul Messner, I think, did that. No, I don't bother doing that. I have this lighter here now. It's a little bit of a heavier lighter. It doesn't quite go with lightweight. I have tried lightweight jet flames, but they kept breaking on me. They just didn't work. So I used this one. Now it is a little bit heavier. I will admit that for my lightweight philosophy, this is probably for what it is, this is probably the heaviest thing I have in everything, but it works. And it's a turbo jet lighter. So with a normal lighter, when you turn the lighter upside down, the flame just curls back up and burns your fingers. But with this, when you light it, okay, it's not working now because it's got a bit they only really work if you keep it in your pocket. But if you keep it in your pocket, I left it on the ground, but you keep it in your pocket and it will stay, you know, warm, and then it works a treat. And then you just light it like that, turn it upside down, and the jet forces the flame into the material and lights it. Easy. So I bring that lighter for you know, for convenience, but you do need to keep it in a pocket when it's very cold, or if it's a bit chilly. That's the only downside, but as long as you keep it warm in your pocket, it's perfect. So cooking system is exactly the same year round. It's no different, and meths works. It just works even in the winter. It might take a bit longer, but it works, and there's no, as long as you stand on it, there's no moving parts to break, and as long as you keep your lighter warm, it lights perfectly. And I always carry a spare, a spare lighter, in a normal lighter, in an emergency as well, which would be a bit of a faff to light it. Backpack, obviously just take a backpack big enough to put everything in. You can use a down quilt, and I might try the down quilt again on Dartmoor, but sorry, I might try the synthetic quilt on Dartmoor again, but synthetic is not as warm as down. So if it's going to get very cold, then you really do need, I think, down. But like I said, that synthetic quilt, the MOD quilt, I will try it again, you know, when I get a chance. Shelters. I still like my lightweight MOD Cuban shelters, even in the winter. You've seen plenty of camping videos of these things used in the winter. The Super Mid obviously is probably my favourite for the winter because there's just masses of space inside it. The only problem you're going to have is snow, because you can't seal yourself inside so much. So spindrift, you know, could be a problem, although I believe with the new MLD Super Mid, I think the beak can be closed, which you can't in mine, and I still haven't done that thing which I need to do with my beak yet either. So that's really the only downside of the one that I have for, you know, for the winter, but that might even have changed in the newest design. And really, I still think that you know, a Cuban, you know, single skin shelter is, generally speaking, you know, plenty for the winter, but obviously for, you know, you just have to be aware of limitations of that. So I probably should be telling you to go and get a tent. To be on the safe side. I don't want people saying, "Well, don't use that. Don't use a tent." So you know, a tent probably still is, you know, for most people, a tent is still the go-to option, you know, for the winter. But if you're not expecting snow, then you know, a Cuban shelter is still a single skin shelter is still, you know, a very good option in my opinion, you know, from what I've experienced. But then I've not been up north in Scotland ever in the winter. I've not been up to the Lake District or the Peak District or any of those places in the winter. So, you know, I'm kind of limited to, you know, a southwesterly winter. We don't get very much snow down here. We get a lot of wind, especially after baked beans. And of course it can get chilly down here, but it tends not to get necessarily freezing cold down here, although it, you know, it can do. You know, it can get down to -2, -3, -4, something like that, but not that often down here, to be honest. So my winter camping is more limited than, you know, than other people's. But if I was going up, you know, if I was going up north, and you know, then I would still be tempted to take something like this, but I would probably be careful that I could mitigate something if necessary. But like I said, if I was going to be around a lot of snow, then I would probably take the Acto maybe, but even in a lot of snow, that's not going to cope with a lot of snow. So I would probably still be using, I've seen pictures of trail stars in snow. Yeah, I mean, I think if you had a bivvy or something like that, you'd probably be okay. I've definitely seen pictures of trail stars in the snow, and that doesn't have a door on it. So people do use these things, you know, quite successfully in quite poor weather. You don't have to have a tent. I think it's that you just have to know what you're doing and be prepared, you know, and be prepared for that. But a first time camper, yeah, probably get a tent, says he. Well, the very first time I went camping, I did take a Hillyberg, but then the second time and virtually every other time after that, I've taken an MLD single skin shelter, apart from when I take a Hillyberg just for the fun of it, really, and to have it be destroyed in shootouts with these types of things. So yeah, that's it. So really, I think I've covered everything. I've covered shelters, you know, a tent if you're not sure, Single skin shelter really is good. You don't, on a single skin shelter, you're not always necessarily, especially the Cuban ones, you're not always necessarily going to be able to pitch them right to the ground. Maybe it's just I'm a crap pitcher, maybe. But I find I can never quite pitch them right to the ground. So I always have wind blowing through and everything like that, but it doesn't bother me. You know, as long as you're warm enough in your sleeping bag and you've got plenty of warm clothes on and you've got some gloves to keep your hands warm. You know, again, you know, it's fine. That's where I camp. You can use an inner if you want to. I just put this here for convenience. This is the inner for the Duo Mid. I tend to just stick this with the Duo Mid because it's the ground sheet. It's the only real ground sheet that I've got that goes with the Duo Mid. I do have a single ground sheet that goes with the Duo Mid, but it's so small, it's almost unusable. Unfortunately, so I never use it. So if I'm using the Duo Mid, I tend to bring the mesh inner because then it just keeps everything, because there's not that much space here, it keeps everything inside as it were, without it all, you know, falling on the lawn or something like that. Now in the winter, if I'm using the Trailstar or the Super Mid, or if I use the, you know, the Tarp, which I haven't really used in the winter as such, but I don't use an inner. I have no need for it. As long as I'm warm enough in the sleeping bag, on a warm enough mat, with a foam mat underneath, and I've got plenty of clothes on, and maybe if there is a breeze, my wind shirt keeps the breeze off, I don't need an inner. Again, I'm not camping in the snow, so I don't have spin drift to worry about. So it works fine, you know, as long as you're warm enough. You don't need an inner, but get a tent with an inner. So we've covered shelters. We've covered footwear, boots. I tend to wear boots now, just more for convenience than anything else. But you don't need that. You could wear, if you're brave enough, a trail runner with liner socks. And sealskin socks works fine if you just accept it. Except you're going to get wet feet, but it's fine. I've done it many times in the past. Trousers we've covered. I always bring an emergency pack with me. This is maybe for another video, perhaps in here. But in here, obviously, I have a first aid kit. I always have spare line. I always have I use this for like as a trowel, and it's like just like for digging out stakes if you need. I always carry a spare torch. I carry this all the time, but really you only need it in the winter as a spare torch. I've not even tested it. I'll probably just make sure it still works. In here I've got my hand sanitizer, which I must admit when I'm camping I hardly ever bother using, to be honest. I haven't died yet. I've got a repair kit. That's something else I probably ought to do another video on that one day. And I've got some Fusidin H, which you can only get from the doctor, and I probably had for something else. But I find that's very good for insect bites. Tissues, spare tissues, and spare gloves. Actually, these are waterproof, like surgical gloves. I even forgot that they were in here, and I've got some others somewhere else. I tend to keep them handy for when I'm putting the tent away. If the tent's wet in the winter, it saves your gloves getting soaked. Some people might laugh at that, but it's quite handy. Keeps your gloves dry. And that's it. That's all I carry in this. It just keeps all my little bits together. And like I said, I keep meaning to do a video on my first aid kit and my emergency kit, and I still haven't done that yet. Make sure you have plenty of fuel, so know how much fuel you want for how long you're out for. So we covered cooking. Obviously you can have gas stoves and there are other things like that, but I don't use them, so I can't tell you about gas cookers and things. The pocket rocket I used to use for day walks, but I've never ever brought a pocket rocket out camping. I'm sure it works fine though. Yeah, obviously, make sure you've got a torch. I like Petzl. This is a Petzl core. It's fairly lightweight. It's not one of those ones that adjusts the beam of you as you walk. I didn't really get on with those so well. I prefer to be able to set the beam to what I want the beam to do, not what the torch thinks I want it to do. So yeah, obviously a torch, and then make sure that you have power packs, that you can charge it up if necessary. Obviously with power packs, just make sure that you've got cords for everything, because these days you've got different types. You've got USB mini and USB, all sorts of different cords. So make sure that you've got all the cords that you need, for charging up, different things. I seem to have a load of cords now. There's one from an iPhone tablet. Then there's the old mini port thing for charging that up. The Rode microphone and my phone uses the new Type-C cord. So make sure you've got all the cords that you need. And that's it, that's all you need, So basically, when I'm winter camping, I tend to use exactly the same equipment as I do in the summer. The same cook, the shelters are pretty much the same. I might alternate the shelters around a bit. The super mid I tend to only use in the winter, generally speaking, although I've used it in the summer too occasionally. But cooking stuff pretty much stays the same. Shelters pretty much stays the same to similar. Sleeping mat, I might upgrade from a lighter weight summer airbed to a winter airbed. And obviously the sleeping bag, I'll take a warmer sleeping bag and I'll take a warmer down jacket. But other than those types of things, it's pretty much the same really. Just make sure, the most important thing to remember about winter camping, and I probably should have said this at the beginning because everybody's probably turned off by now, is to make sure that you've got plenty of gloves and hats. I don't mean like 20 or something like that, but make sure you've got at least like 3 or 4 pairs of gloves and hats of various thicknesses and types, even if that includes ones that you might just use in camp. In an emergency, you could always wear that to get you back to the car or whatever. But yeah, don't skimp on hats and gloves in the winter. That's the one thing where it really is worth putting extra in, especially if it's going to get, if it could get wet or something like that. Just don't skimp on hats and gloves. Put plenty in. You don't need down booties like I've got here. You don't need down leggings like this. If your sleeping bag's not quite warm enough, you might want them, but this bag, in the temperatures that I tend to use, is plenty. I just, put them on just to, to illustrate that, you can wear them, but you will find with experience what works and what doesn't, and that's basically how it goes. Experience. Get out there and camp. If you're a first timer, I probably wouldn't recommend camping in the winter. First time, camp in the spring. If you're a first timer, my suggestion would be to camp in the spring, and then you've got the summer ahead of you, the autumn, and then you're heading into winter. And that way, depending on how often you can get out, you're going to get at least 3 or 4, 2, 3, 4, whatever, camps in before you get into winter. And if you can camp in the autumn as it's slowly cooling off, then you've got a better chance of, you know, being prepared, you know, for the winter. Whereas if you go straight to a winter camp and you don't realise that you need to take extra gloves and hats, and they get wet, you could get into trouble. You might think that your sleeping bag is going to be warm enough, but it might not be. Like I've said, you know, I'm a freezing cold sleeper, so I always take a bag that is going to be, you know, somewhat colder than I'm expecting, and I wear loads of layers when I'm sleeping. I wear pretty much all the clothes that I've got. I pretty much wear when I'm sleeping, you know, depending on the temperature and everything, you know, like that. Probably if I took an even warmer bag, you know, I might get away with you know, wearing less. But because I like to cook and eat and sit up in camp, you know, there's no point in necessarily bringing a bag that's significantly colder weather. I mean, I do have a bag. This bag here is rated at -5 centigrade. I'm aware that by now most of you have probably turned off, so I'm just waffling along now. So all the important stuff was done. It's probably only like 1 or 2 of you now that are still listening, so that's fine. I'm just waffling along now. So, you know, if the temperature is going to be about -1 or 2, or like 0 or +1 or +2, then I'll bring my -5 rated bag, plus plenty of clothing. If the temperature was going to be -4 or below, the actual temperature, I don't think I'd be warm enough in a -5 bag. So in the house, which is just there, then I have a -21 rated bag, and I have used that on Dartmoor. When I've gone to Dartmoor, which is down south, then, you know, I have used the -21 bag a few times, and I've used it most years, to be honest, but the last few years, the last couple of years, I haven't, because it hasn't been that cold when I've gone down there. But you know, if it's going to be like -5 or -6 centigrade, then I would, the -5 bag, it won't be enough. Although I might get away with a -5 bag in -5, -6 temperatures with this. I'm not sure, I haven't tried it, to be honest, but you know, that might be necessary. So, you know, so that's another option. Like I said, you know, you either take a warmer bag, or a colder bag, warmer bag, whichever way you look at it. Plus you could take down leggings and down booties and things like that, which would add some degrees. You can also, as I mentioned earlier, have an inner, and that adds a degree or so. It doesn't take up any room, and it's super lightweight. But like I said, if it's going to be really cold, like -6, -7, I'm taking my -21 bag. I don't care, you know. People might think, well, you don't need the -21 bag when it's only -5 or -6 or -7, but yeah, I definitely do. I definitely do. And in fact, I'm sure I was on Dartmoor and it was -8 and I was cool in the -21 bag. So, and that was with just some clothes on. So yeah, I definitely need a very warm. Maybe if I was in a tent, maybe that would add another degree or 2 on as well. So that maybe has an effect as well. So again, you need to know your shelters and to the limitations of those shelters to what you're sleeping in. My preference is lightweight open shelters and a very warm sleeping bag. Now, if you have a tent, you might get away with a bag that's not quite as freezing cold as my bags. I'm just talking about, you know, what I like and everything like that. I just like an open shelter as much as possible so I can see out my door, so my neighbours probably looking at their windows. They're looking at the windows probably. Probably thinking, what the hell is he doing? So I won't be in the back garden very much. As soon as I can get, you know, properly down to Dartmoor, then that's where I will. That's where I will go. But given that I've got to get a visa for another visa for Dina later in December, and I might need to be, you know, handy for phone calls and things like that. And the lockdown might end middle of December. I don't think I'm going to get down to Dartmoor in the middle of December. So the next time I'm going to do anything will be January at the earliest. And I don't think I'll be doing anything in the back garden. It's not so much fun in the back garden. But I just wanted to do, you know, just do this little video in the garden, but I won't be doing a video in the garden again. It's the neighbours are around it. They might think it's a bit odd. So, so I won't be in the back garden again, I don't think. And I meant clearing a load of weeds out the way and all complicated things like that. So I won't be doing a back garden video again for forever, I hope. But that pretty much, I think, you know, rounds up my winter, you know, camping video of what you need and everything like that. I will sign off and I will catch you in another video at some point between now and doomsday. So thanks for watching. I will catch you again, as I say, at some point, you know, in the future. And oh, a wristwatch check, Daytona on rubber B red strap, and that works. It's quite effective on that strap. Blue strap on the I can't remember what it's called now. Garmin Fenix 6X. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share the video. I don't know if anybody does that. Anyway, everybody tells you to do that, so I just tell you. That's why I tend to do it at the end, because I never think about it at the beginning. Do hit that notification button, because that's important. I better go inside now and have my dinner, put the kettle on, have a cup of tea, and I will catch you all again soon. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.